1904. Northeast Asia is a chessboard and two empires want the same square. Russia has pushed the Trans-Siberian Railway all the way to Vladivostok. She has leased Port Arthur from a broken Qing dynasty. She has poured soldiers into Manchuria and refused to leave. To Tsar Nicholas II, Japan is what his interior minister Vyacheslav von Plehve openly called it, a small victorious war that will crush revolution at home. Japan sees something different. Japan sees suffocation. The Meiji leadership under Prime Minister Katsura Taro has spent a decade preparing for exactly this moment. They have British-built battleships. They have Krupp artillery. They have a general staff trained by the Germans and a navy trained by the Royal Navy. And they have something Russia does not. They are fighting 300 miles from home, while Russia is fighting 5,000. On the night of February 8, 1904, without a declaration of war, Admiral Togo sends 10 destroyers into Port Arthur Harbor. Torpedoes rip into the Russian Pacific Squadron at anchor. 3 battleships, the Tsesarevich, the Ritvizin, the cruiser Pallada, are crippled in minutes. The war has started and Russia has already lost the initiative. But here is what most retellings leave out. The Russian commander in the Far East, Admiral Yevgeny Alexeyev, is a court favorite with almost no combat experience. His army commander, General Alexei Kuropatkin, is a brilliant staff officer who has never won an independent battle, and the two men hate each other. Every order from St. Petersburg has to pass through a chain of command that is already at war with itself. Stay with me, because the moment that shocks even the Japanese high command is still coming. The war is decided not at sea but on a hill, 203-meter hill. That is its name. It rises above Port Arthur like a natural observation post, and whoever holds it can see every Russian warship in the harbor. General Nogi Mersuk, commander of the Japanese Third Army, understands this immediately. He also understands what it will cost. If this is landing, save this video. You will want to come back to this one, because what happens on 203-meter hill is the single most important land action of the entire war. From August to December 1904, Nogi throws wave after wave of Japanese infantry at the Russian defenses. Machine guns, Maxims, the new nightmare of modern war, cut them down in numbers no European army has yet imagined. Nogi loses both of his sons in the assault, 59,000 Japanese casualties. Nearly 16,000 dead. The hill becomes a slaughterhouse of a kind the world will not see again until the Somme 12 years later. But on December 5th, the summit falls. Japanese artillery observers climb to the top and begin calling fire onto the Russian fleet trapped in the harbor below. 280mm siege howitzers, designed for coastal fortifications, start dropping 500-pound shells directly onto battleship decks. Within a week, every major warship of the Russian Pacific Squadron is either sunk at its mooring or reduced to scrap. The Peresvit, the Pobeda, the Ritvizin, the Poltava, all gone. On January 2, 1905, the fortress surrenders, and here is the decision that changes everything. Back in St. Petersburg, Tsar Nicholas has already ordered the Baltic Fleet, his entire European naval reserve, to sail around the world and rescue Port Arthur. Admiral Zinovy Rozhestvensky is given 45 warships, told to steam from the Baltic Sea to the Sea of Japan, and expected to arrive in fighting condition. The moment Port Arthur falls, the mission becomes meaningless. There is no port left to rescue. There is only one option now: fight through to Vladivostok. Rozhestvensky is ordered to continue. 18,000 nautical miles, 7 months at sea. Coal purchased from German steamers, crews rotting from scurvy and exhaustion. And along the way, at Doggerbank in the North Sea, the Russians open fire on British fishing trawlers in the middle of the night, mistaking them for Japanese torpedo boats. They kill fishermen from Hull. They nearly start a war with the Royal Navy. By the time the Baltic Fleet reaches the Tsushima Strait in May 1905, its hulls are so encrusted with tropical marine growth that the battleships have lost 2 knots of speed. And Admiral Togo is waiting. But that was only the setup. What Togo does next defies every rule of naval warfare taught in every European academy. 1,400 hours. May 27, 1905. Togo raises the Z flag on the mast of his flagship Mikasa. It carries a single message, one that every Japanese sailor has memorized. The rise or fall of the empire depends upon this one battle. Let every man do his utmost. Then he does something a European admiral would call insane. Rozhestvensky's fleet is steaming north in line-ahead formation, straight for Vladivostok. Togo is approaching from the east. In every naval textbook of the era, the correct maneuver is to run parallel to the enemy, exchanging broadsides. Instead, Togo orders his entire battle line to turn 16 points, a full 180-degree turn, directly across the bow of the oncoming Russian fleet. For 15 minutes, the Japanese battleships are turning one after another at the same point in the ocean. Rozhestvensky has his chance. Every Russian gun that can bear could concentrate on that turning point and destroy the Mikasa. He does not do it. His gunnery is disorganized. His shells are the wrong type, filled with insufficient explosive charge. His crews are exhausted from 7 months at sea. The Japanese complete the turn, and now Togo has done what naval strategists dream of. He has crossed the T his entire broadside. Every heavy gun in the Japanese line can fire on the leading Russian battleships. The Russians can only reply with their forward guns. The result is annihilation on a scale never before seen at sea. The Russian flagship Nyas Suvorov is turned into a burning wreck in under an hour. Rozhestvensky is knocked unconscious by shell fragments. The battleship Oslabia rolls over and sinks with almost her entire crew, the first modern steel battleship ever sunk by gunfire alone. The Borodino explodes when a Japanese shell reaches her main magazine. The Imperator Alexander III capsizes with no survivors. 4 battleships gone before nightfall. When the sun rises on May 28th, Japanese torpedo boats and cruisers finish the job. By evening, the numbers are almost impossible to believe. Russia has lost 8 battleships, 4 cruisers, 7 destroyers, and every auxiliary vessel, 21 warships in total. 4,380 Russian sailors are dead. 5,917 are prisoners, including Admiral Rozhestvensky himself, captured aboard a destroyer while unconscious. Japan has lost 3 torpedo boats and 117 sailors. 3 torpedo boats. No naval battle before or since has been so lopsided between 2 modern industrial powers. Trafalgar was a slaughter, but Nelson still lost 450 men. Tsushima is not a battle. It is an execution. The consequences do not stay at sea. They reach every capital on Earth. In Manchuria, the largest land battle in human history up to that point has already been decided. At Mukden, from February 20th to March 10, 1905, 610,000 men clashed across a 50-mile front. Field Marshal Yama Iwao commanded 270,000 Japanese. General Kuropatkin commanded 340,000 Russians. Kuropatkin, cautious to the point of paralysis, ordered retreat after retreat even when local victories were within his grasp. When Mukden fell, Russia had lost 90,000 men, 27,000 dead, 22,000 captured. The Russian army in Manchuria was broken as a fighting force before the Baltic Fleet even reached Asian waters, but the deeper collapse is inside Russia itself. On January 22, 1905, Bloody Sunday, Cossacks fire on a peaceful workers' procession outside the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. The war meant to crush revolution has ignited it. By October, the entire empire is on strike. Sailors mutiny on the battleship Potemkin. Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich is assassinated in Moscow. Nicholas II is forced to issue the October Manifesto, creating the first Russian Duma. The autocracy never fully recovers. 12 years later, this same fault line will crack open into Bolshevik revolution. And on the other side of the world, President Theodore Roosevelt of the United States mediates the peace. The Treaty of Portsmouth is signed on September 5, 1905. Japan receives Port Arthur, the southern half of Sakhalin Island, and Russian recognition of Korea as a Japanese sphere of influence. Roosevelt wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Japan becomes the first Asian power in modern history to defeat a European great power in a full-scale war. The shockwave changes everything. In India, in Vietnam, in Egypt, in the Ottoman Empire, colonized peoples read the news and understand for the first time that European empires are not invincible. Sun Yat-sen calls it the greatest event of our century. Jawaharlal Nehru, a teenager at the time, writes decades later that Tsushima woke Asia from a long sleep. The military lessons are equally seismic. Every navy on Earth begins building all big-gun battleships in the mold of what Togo proved at Tsushima, a race that culminates in the launching of HMS Dreadnought 1 year later, and eventually in the naval arms race that helps trigger the First World War. The machine gun and the trench system, first proven at Port Arthur, will define every European battlefield from 1914 to 1918. Japan itself learns a different lesson, one that will destroy her 40 years later. The lesson is that a surprise attack on an unprepared enemy fleet can decide a war in a single stroke. In December 1941, at a place called Pearl Harbor, Japanese admirals will apply exactly that doctrine against a very different opponent, and the consequences will end the empire that Tsushima built. CTA 12-0013-00. If you have made it this far, you already understand something most casual history channels never explain, that the wars of the 20th century were shaped by a single battle in the Tsushima Strait that most Westerners cannot even locate on a map. This channel exists for viewers who want the strategy, the commanders, and the decisions behind the outcome. New battle every Wednesday: Napoleonic sieges, Cold War standoffs, Pacific carrier duels, the operations the textbooks skip. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so YouTube actually shows you the next one. And drop a comment. Which side do you think had the better strategy at Tsushima, Rajastvenski trying to run for Vladivostok, or Togo betting the Empire on a single turn? I read the top comments. Outro 13-00-15-00. Admiral Togo Hiehikairo lived until 1934. He died a Marquis, celebrated as the Nelson of the East. Admiral Rajastvenski survived Japanese captivity, returned to Russia, and was court-martialed. He was acquitted only because the court accepted that he had been unconscious when the fleet surrendered. He died in 1909, still a broken man. General Nogi, victor of Port Arthur, committed ritual suicide with his wife in 1912, on the day of the Emperor Meiji's funeral, unable, he said, to outlive the sovereign he had served. The lesson of the Russo-Japanese War is not that Japan was destined to win. It is that empires do not fall to superior enemies. They fall to their own inertia, to court favorites in command, to armies fighting 5,000 miles from home, to leaders who mistake size for strength. Russia had every material advantage in 1904. She lost anyway, because the country that plans harder, trains longer, and commits total will beats the country that assumes victory is owed to it. If this one hit, my video on the Battle of Mukden, the largest land battle in history before the First World War, will blow your mind. 600,000 men on a single front, a commander who could not commit, and a defeat that lit the fuse of the Russian Revolution. Watch that one next. In May 1905, a Russian battle fleet that had sailed 18,000 miles around the world was annihilated in a single afternoon by the Imperial Japanese Navy at the Battle of Tsushima. This video breaks down why Japan beat Russia in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905. From Admiral Togo Hiehikairo's night torpedo attack on Port Arthur to General Nogi Mersuk's brutal siege at 203-meter hill, from Field Marshal Yama's victory at Mukden to Admiral Rajastvenski's doomed voyage of the Baltic Fleet. We cover the commanders, the tactics, the casualties, and the moment Togo crossed the T at Tsushima, the most lopsided naval battle between two modern powers in history. We also examine why Russia's defeat triggered the 1905 revolution, reshaped Asian nationalism, and set the stage for both Pearl Harbor and the Russian Revolution. Chapters 00. 00, the fleet that sailed 18,000 miles to die. 01. 00, the Powder Keg in Manchuria. 03. 00, the siege of Port Arthur. 06. 00, the crossing of the T at Tsushima. 09. 00, the empire that broke. 12. 00, subscribe for weekly battle breakdowns. 13. 00, the legacy of Tsushima, new military history breakdowns every Wednesday. Subscribe and hit the bell.